Hey, what's up, everybody? So today I found an interesting article. It's titled Tech Executives Commissioned as Senior Army Officers Won't Recuse Themselves from DoD Business Dealings. And I think that's really interesting because, as we're going to get into in this article, these guys are being sworn in as lieutenant colonels, and they'll be going into the Pentagon, and they say that they won't promise to keep themselves out of dealing with the companies from which they come from, because these guys are executives. Let's get into the first paragraph here. 4 big tech executives the Army directly commissioned to be lieutenant colonels with no military background will not recuse themselves from business dealings with the Department of Defense, as the Pentagon, particularly the Army, cozies up to Silicon Valley. So this is pretty unprecedented and weird. Normally, this is a position in the military that's achieved after 15 to 20 years of service. And I always thought the military was 20 years ahead of the tech sector, but now it's starting to seem like they're bending over backwards for them. They're kind of starting to seem like a bunch of admiring groupies doing whatever the hell Silicon Valley wants them to do. The second paragraph reads, earlier this month, the Army announced Detachment 201, the name being a reference to HTTP code, for the newly commissioned executives of Palantir, Meta, and OpenAI. The new formation is set to recruit tech executives to work on major Army challenges, but the service has not articulated exactly what those individuals would do, instead focusing on recruiting talent and creating jobs around them. For those of you who don't know, HTTP 201 is just the instance of something being created. It sounds like there will be more of these executives joining this detachment, and I just think it's really odd how they don't really want to specify what they're going to be doing every day in the Pentagon, which is likely where they're going to be spending most of their time despite being in the Army. I want to know why we can't know what they're doing. These are people who are being basically shoved through the door. They don't have to prove any kind of proficiency in anything, and they just get to start whispering into the ear of the highest level officials. This is very shady. Let's go on to paragraph 3. They're not making acquisition decisions. They're not senior decision makers. Stephen Warren, an Army spokesperson, told reporters Wednesday when asked about what oversight mechanisms are in place over the new unit. It's not in our interest to show any favoritism to a company. That would be the exact opposite of what we're trying to do, right? What we want is competition. That's what we're looking for. These guys will help us think about that. Oh, I'm sure they're going to help you think about other companies aside from the ones that they came from. I'm really sure that in the middle of their meeting with you, describing how their technology is going to kill a bunch of people, they're going to bring up some small startup in Kentucky and how they're just so wonderful and up and coming and good. They're really an underdog, you know? And even if that does happen, we all know that everybody in that room is just going to laugh, and then they're going to go back to talking about how to smoke more people using this technology. And it's funny when they say it's not in our interest. Like, no shit, Sherlock. It's not in the interest of the Defense Department to show favoritism to a company. That's bad for PR. But it is good for certain specific people within the Pentagon or the Army who are going to inevitably make strong connections to these people and be tied to large pools of money that back them, right? Anyways, let's go to paragraph 4 here. The 4 include Shyam Sankar, Chief Technology Officer for Palantir, Andrew Bosworth, Chief Technology Officer of Meta, Kevin Weil, Chief Product Officer of OpenAI, and Bob McGrew, Advisor at Thinking Machines Lab and former Chief Research Officer for OpenAI. So I understand the AI explanation when it comes to things like recruitment and logistics. Meta is the parent company for Facebook and Instagram. What kind of service are they going to be providing to the Pentagon? It seems like to me that Meta just has a lot of data on the American people, and that's about it. So that's extremely strange to me. The next paragraph says, they'll take part in an extremely accelerated 2-week training course to familiarize themselves with the Army. Some of that will be online training, and the rest will be at Fort Benning, Georgia. It's unclear whether they'll have to adhere to typical service standards, including fitness and marksmanship. Yeah, this really just seems like a loophole way to circumvent the law just to shove these guys into the door and get them in there. Traditionally, people have to go through a decade or two of service to get anywhere near the Pentagon, but apparently the DoD likes Silicon Valley so much, specifically these 3 companies, that they're willing to just kind of ignore all that, teach these guys some procedure and protocol, and just get them right on in there. And remember, Detachment 201. These are just the first 4 guys. You may end up with 24 people within the next few years, all whispering into the ears of people in the Pentagon. This is actually disgusting. Honestly, this is disgusting. This should not be happening. But it just seems like more and more our government simply doesn't care about conventions or anything of the sort. They don't care for the wisdom that implemented the rules in the first place either. The article goes on to say, Sankar has pledged to donate all of the money he earns as a part-time officer to Army Emergency Relief, the de facto nonprofit for soldiers and their families, according to a Palantir spokesperson. Pay for a part-time officer at this rank with no time in service would amount to roughly $10,000 per year, but could be higher or lower depending on how much time they commit to the Army. This really is not a relevant statement. $10,000 is nothing to this guy. He's an executive at one of the largest tech firms in the country. He's just doing this for his own optics and his own PR. That's all it is. And to follow that up, in paragraph 7, the article says, last year, Sankar sold Palantir stock amounting to $367.9 million and has made numerous other multi-million-dollar deals. None of the other executives, now Army Reserve officers, responded to requests for comment. None of them were made available for interviews. Of course not. They'll give you the bare minimum, one guy, probably the one that makes them look best, which still terrible example, $370 million. So thanks for donating $10,000 a year to the Army Emergency Relief. And I always just find it so odd how someone can amass $370 million plus and they still want to go and do all this weird, shady stuff. I mean, if it were me, I would be retiring. I would buy a nice house somewhere and put that money into a whole bunch of different asset classes and just kick my feet up and just be done with the whole thing. I made it. Wouldn't you, right? You're approaching $500 million, and that's not enough. For some reason, you want to be in the Pentagon every day, whispering into the ear of these people, and likely trying to convince them to shut out competitors, and probably push for war as well. But we'll get into more of that here later on in the article. Just before Bosworth was sworn in, Meta announced a deal with defense technology company Anduril to pursue military contracts that involve artificial intelligence and augmented reality, which could be worth millions of dollars. OpenAI also announced a $200 million defense contract within days of Bosworth being sworn in to develop an artificial intelligence tool. Palantir has been involved in numerous enormous federal deals, particularly during the second Trump administration, including a $759 million Army contract for AI development and another massive project to compile data on Americans. Okay, so that's huge, right? This is adjacent to the sworn-in guys, but again, these guys with their 2 weeks of whatever the hell they're going through, who is their allegiance to? Are these people going into the military to serve their country? I don't think so. I really doubt that. I think what this is about is some huge plan to use Palantir to compile data on Americans. And then for some reason, Meta is going to be there to help supply that data. And then the Department of Defense is going to use that information for something that we don't know because they won't tell us exactly what they're doing. They give us this excuse that they want to use it for logistics and recruitment. And somehow I just don't believe that that's the full and honest truth. I mean, if you look at Palantir alone, it's already in the IRS, the NSA, and the NHI, etc., etc. Elon Musk and Trump made sure that that AI was pushed into almost every massive government agency, which possesses tons of information on the American people. I seriously think that this is probably the biggest invasion of privacy within this current time period. And technically, this may be within the bounds of the law. However, I don't think that this kind of technology was ever anticipated. I think our lawmakers right now and the president and the people in the Department of Defense should be writing policy to ensure that this kind of technology is never implanted within government, especially not within areas of the government that have to do with war. The next paragraph says, while in regular formations, lieutenant colonel is a senior rank that garners respect. Inside the Pentagon, it's often the bare minimum rank to enter the room, a relatively junior grade officer in a sea of top brass and high-level civilian decision makers. The law allows the military to direct commission up to the rank of colonel, but that would require Senate confirmation. So it's funny how there's this little gap called lieutenant colonel where you can get into the door of the Pentagon, but you're not quite a colonel, which would require the Senate to confirm you as such. So that's why they're a lieutenant colonel, everybody. is because they don't want to have to go through the Senate and have this thing get bigger. They don't want any more eyes on this than there already are, but they want them in the Pentagon. And to me, this just seems like circumventing the law and tradition. Again, this is normally reserved for people with 15 to 20 years of service. And if I were in the military and I were working on my career, I would feel a bit alienated. I might even feel a bit cheated. Like these guys just skipped 2 decades of service and are now at the highest echelon of the military, the Pentagon. And I think there's a reason why we have basically a 15 to 20 year vetting period for people that are going to go into that. We don't even know if these people were born here in America. We don't know anything about these people. And now they're going to be in a building where extremely sensitive information is kept. Something about this just doesn't feel right to me. Military.com spoke with nearly 24 Army and Pentagon officials, from mid-grade officers to senior brass, as well as defense analysts and Capitol Hill aides. Across the board, there was strong support for the concept of pulling high-end civilian tech talent into uniform, particularly in a bureaucracy often faulted for its glacial pace of change. Well, we don't need to expedite people like this into the Pentagon in order to change the pace. That's something that should come from within. And that goes for all of government. Our government is extremely slow, and I highly doubt that these guys are really going to make a difference in that regard. They'll probably be able to make some efficiencies here and there in the stuff that we're being told about, but then they're probably going to be doing stuff like pushing for war, trying to keep us out of peacetime, trying to make sure that the military in totality procures technology from their companies, and all kinds of other garbage that we just don't want. So now we hear from this lady at CNAS, which is the Center for a New American Security. If we end up in a war in an Indo-Pacific conflict, we're going to need to tap more people like this, said Catherine Kosminski, a national security personnel expert at the Center for a New American Security. And the potential benefits go beyond Silicon Valley-style innovation. Tech is the new hot thing, but think about the logistics piece. Kosminski added, how do you capture that from UPS or FedEx? How do we feed our service members in a contested environment? Well, geez, I don't know, Catherine. Maybe the same way that we've been doing it for the last 150 fucking years. I mean, seriously, what is this garbage? I didn't know what CNAS was before I read this article, but I looked it up. It's a bipartisan research group that shills for defense and security agencies within the government. They use public research in order to help convince the people that the optics on whatever is going on is good. They basically help the government and the military and whoever else is involved in shady situations like this to say just the right thing to get our consent. Well, this is a bad one, Catherine. How do we feed our service members in a contested environment? Boy, we definitely need some AI to help us out with that one. Jesus Christ, man. The article continues, still, nearly all sources raised red flags about how the Army handled the rollout, calling it a self-inflicted optics nightmare. Yeah, you got that right. Service officials have insisted none of those executives will be involved in decision-making on government contracts. Yet there is virtually no systemic oversight on that potential conflict of interest. Right, and that is the entire point of these guys being pushed in here. They are going in there specifically to build rapport, build loyalty, and probably gather dirt so that they can compel people within the Pentagon to buy their company's stuff, to keep using their companies, even if their companies in the future end up doing a bad job and fall behind. This is like an anchor point. This is a meat hook. This is why when a company starts failing and producing a bad product, the government continues to use them anyway and continues to pay them ungodly amounts of money for their stuff. They won't be involved in the decision making. They won't be making the decisions. They'll just be telling certain people that they'll make a whole lot of money if they do make certain decisions. We all know this has been going on for a long time, and this is just another instance of this. Only these people are going even deeper. This is an even further breach of our government by corporate interests. This is seriously disgusting. Like, as I'm reading this, I'm just realizing how bad this actually is. That this is exactly what the problem is that's been going on for so long. It's unfolding right before our eyes in an unprecedented way. Because now these guys are actually donning uniforms. And don't mistake yourselves. These are not soldiers. These are not military personnel. 2 weeks of what I'm guessing is going to be simple procedure and protocol education so that they can walk around and know what to do. That doesn't make you a part of the military. Not by a long shot. I mean, they have no fitness qualifications, no marksmanship qualifications, no MOD anything. These guys are literally just coming in here to be like little diplomats for their own companies. It's disgusting. It makes me fucking sick. The decision to grant officer commissions to executives with no military background without clear recusal from future defense business sparked concerns of ethical lapses and blurred lines. There's nothing blurred about this for me. If they can't recuse themselves from doing business for their companies from which they are representing, because they're not representing the American people, obviously they're representing their companies here in the Pentagon, then they really shouldn't be there. We're not even getting an answer on whether or not they'll be doing this while they're in uniform. Are they going to go in and just establish these connections and then leave and then continue doing business? Or are they going to be doing business all along? And obviously, once they get in there, from day one, it's going to be business. There is no way that these guys are going in there for patriotic reasons. They have almost $400 million in their bank account, and suddenly they decide, I'm going to join the military. That's really interesting. I really think that's interesting. And I'm wondering how long they're going to be in there and whether or not they'll move up in rank and then have access to all kinds of national security information. Because now that they're sworn in, they'll have access to that ladder as well. They may even become some of the highest ranking personnel in the Pentagon, given enough time. So they may work themselves up to being a general, maybe, and then also an executive for Palantir or OpenAI. Bro, what the fuck? Several officials warned that any future Pentagon deals involving the companies could be tainted by perceptions of favoritism. Yeah, you think? Potentially souring relationships with competing contractors and casting a shadow over future acquisitions. Again, this is the whole reason why these guys are going in here. They want to build a sense of favoritism for their corporations for which they represent. They're going in there to gather dirt, build rapport, and establish meat hook style connections so that they can ensure that they remain the top dog and the first people that the government calls when it comes to defense-related applications for decades to come. That is all this is about. These people are like infiltrators, moving in to subvert the interests of the American people and steer the money ship into the direction of the coffers of their corporations. Most officials interviewed see long-term promise for the Army, but the initiative is also emerging as a flashpoint. The latest sign of the service's growing relationship with Silicon Valley, a rapidly warming connection that's turning into a growing concern for lawmakers worried about big tech influence and lobbying. Yeah, geez, I wonder why you're concerned. This is like the next evolution in lobbying. That's exactly what this is. You're literally a part of the government and a part of your corporation at the same time. Normally, you have to wine and dine these people and pay them on an offshore bank account to get them to do what you want. But now you might actually have somebody that comes from your corporation that works their way up within the government because they just get planted in there. My God, this is just gross. This is really disgusting. These guys have no business being in these positions. First of all, they didn't earn them. Obviously, they didn't earn it. Second of all, they don't have the philosophy for it. They aren't about patriotism, and they certainly aren't about serving the American people. They could give a rat's ass about protecting us. This is all about the money. This is all about the business, which is why they won't recuse themselves from it. Any normal patriot would say, sure, I won't do that. Going forward, since I have $370 million net worth, I will not do that. But these guys refuse to do that. They refuse to back off from business because it's the whole reason they're there. Obviously, like this, it doesn't get any more obvious than this. Much of the concern centers on what exactly wealthy tech executives already wielding outsized influence stand to gain from a formal relationship with the Army. Money. It's called money. Service officials insist patriotism is the driving force. Oh, that's good. Sure. Okay. All right. However, while the Pentagon has long tapped private sector talent through advisory roles and consulting gigs, issuing uniforms marks a largely unprecedented step in the modern era. Exactly. The next evolution of lobbying is to become the person that you wish to lobby. That way you don't have to lobby anybody. You're just them. You are the them. And you just make the decisions that you want. And my God, imagine the money that your corporation will pay you for being them. Next paragraph says, while an executive role will likely have more influence than a reserve officer with no notable title, working directly with the Army would likely yield more networking opportunities within the Pentagon and constant direct contact with senior Army leaders. Absolutely, these people are going to be there night and day, sitting right next to these people who are making all of the important decisions. And you know they're going to have like a little straw neatly tucked between their lips going straight to their ear, whispering things like, we need to invade this country. We need to tap the NSA and get more information on everybody. How do we force people to go to war? If we institute a draft, how will we make sure that everybody complies? Fucking bullshit, man. And then the article finishes with a quote, when it isn't obvious what rich guys get out of something, that's what worries me, one Capitol Hill national security advisor told military.com on the condition of anonymity to speak candidly. And I wonder if the anonymity condition was because they don't want people in the government to find out that they are speaking out against it. I mean, seriously, think about this. Why would you need anonymity for that? You're worried that somebody else in the government is going to see that maybe you're a little bit critical of this whole situation when you should be, and that they're going to fire you? Because that's fucked up, right? Or is it because you're worried you sound so stupid because this is absolutely obvious what they're going to get out of this, and you just want to make this little slight comment here to help people direct their thoughts in the right direction? Because it is obvious what these rich guys are going to get out of this. It's a whole shit ton of money. Probably a lot more than they already have, which is why they're willing to do it. This isn't small change. This isn't like $1 million or $2 million here or there. I highly doubt these guys would give away years of their lives for an extra few $1 million when they're already sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars. No, these guys want to be billionaires. That's what they want. These guys want to be the next billionaires that come about over the next few years. That's what this is all about. It's all about money. It's all about becoming the wealthiest person that you possibly can. Again, that is a mindset to me that makes no sense. If I had $15 million, I would retire immediately. I'd be putting it into different places. I would grow it over time. I'd spend very little. I would live a very modest life, and that would be enough for me. I would just sit around, play video games, and just enjoy my life. I certainly wouldn't go through this weird 2-week program to become a part of the Pentagon and then push senior officials within it to do all kinds of terrible things. And this is just another great example of how greedy some people are in our country. This is insane levels of greed. The guy already sold $370 million worth of stock, and it's not enough. It never will be enough. This guy wants to make money till the day he dies. He wants to die in a giant Olympic swimming pool of $100 bills and gold coins. And I just cannot impress upon everybody how disgusting this kind of mindset is. What kind of person does this? What kind of person needs this much money? What are you even going to do with all that money? It is so weird. These people are fucking weirdos. But this is, guys, this is exactly what's happening all throughout the government right now. We are having essentially a corporate oligarch takeover of our country, and they are now literally putting these executives into uniforms. What the fuck? Anyways, that's where I'm going to leave it for now. This is really vile and evil, in my opinion, because we all know where it's going. So, anyways, I'll talk to you later.